Hello, this is Professor Terrell, and I am here to share details of the Zoom session that took place on March 17th with students who missed the session and then were subsequently unable to access the recorded version because it had already been eliminated by the time you were able to get to it. In any case, I shared with the class some housekeeping notes as well. So I'll share those first and then I'll get on with the midterm review. The seminary is offering students a pass-fail option for all courses, with a pass being minimally a C grade. You can still opt for a letter grade, but you have the option of taking it as a pass-fail. And one of the things I would like to do is to press our faculty to, if we go in this direction in terms of grading period, then we should make pass with distinction an option for those who would score high. But you can decide on whether you want to do pass fail or continue to get a letter grade during this week while you're taking the exam. And you will have later on this week a midterm assessment of your work that comes directly from me, and it'll indicate whether it is a pass or fail, or and the letter grade that you would have received. I've generally been pleased with your work and how you've responded to your fellow students, and I understand the anxiety in this kind of altered educational environment. And I want you to know that Anjanette Allen has been diligent in reading your emails and conveying your concerns to me. So when you reach out to her, she reaches back to me, and we're both responding in the most humane and thoughtful ways, even though you may or may not hear directly from us. Also, I want you to know that I will reduce your required critical summaries or reflections in the first half of the semester by 2. This means that if you're behind by 1 or 2 during the period that we studied foundations, you can opt not to do them, or you can complete them and drop the 2 with the lowest scores. In the upcoming second half of the semester, in which we'll study and reflect on doctrine, I will reduce the number of your required reflections again by 2. Please note that the midterm is in 2 parts on 2 pages, and it is vitally important that you read the instructions at the beginning of the exam. You must privilege the authors on my syllabus. You are free, though, to utilize other works that help you to make specific points, but I want you to privilege those works that I had given you so that I know that you understand the requirements of our discipline. In any case, the midterm exam is on foundations, and there are some instructions typed at the top of your exam. Take your time and read those because they are incredibly important. It's really important that you type your responses in 12-point times or Times New Roman font, and to use double spacing. Also, for those of you who have not read the announcement, there is a page requirement, and it is 3 to 4 pages per question that you answer. So in all, you should have about 12 to 15 pages for parts 1 and part 2 of the exam. It is vitally important that you also include your first and last name in the title of your document, because you can't imagine how many files I have in my computer that are called midterm exam with no name and no reference to who it is. So I would like for you to put your name in the title of your document so that I can read it at my leisure, or at my convenience. That the reason for this kind of diligence in these instructions is because I have issues with my eyes, and I have to rest my eyes frequently because I have diabetic retinopathy. So please, 12-point times or Times New Roman font, double spacing, include your first and last name in the title of the document. Also, remember, because it is on the syllabus, that for this and all other written work for the class that is not a direct quote from the primary sources, the use of inclusive language is required. The exam is in two parts, part 1 and part 2. In part 1, you will select 3 of 4 questions. And in part 2, it is incumbent on everyone to complete the task of creating a historical timeline, and it should include a broad overview of the emergence of Christian theological traditions and movements. And then you should write an essay on the streams of tradition that feed your tradition, your perspective, that feed your perspective. So that historical timeline, I gave some further instructions in the announcement that I put on Canvas as well. But to make sure that you understand what I want, I recognize that people are unable to create an exhaustive historical timeline because that's just impossible. But I want you to be aware of the gaps in your historical knowledge, and I want you to be aware of the necessity of having a historical perspective on the development of the disciplines of theology and the thought processes that go into the creation of doctrine. It's very important that you do this because it helps us to demystify the origins of God talk, which is really human talk about God. So it's very important that you complete the timeline. So no matter how exhaustive or not exhaustive that it is, I will give you all the points for that particular question if you then also write an essay on the streams of tradition that feed your perspective. It's vitally important that you answer all parts of each question that I ask you, including that of the timeline. Okay. In part 1, I'm returning to part 1 now, you are to write a brief essay on any 3 of the following questions. The questions are, the first one has to do with terminology that you will need to know as a theologian and that you will need to understand thoroughly and demonstrate your thorough understanding thereof. And then there are questions that are associated with those terms as well. That you are to answer. The questions are detailed. They are multi-layered. They are graduate level. They require graduate level thinking. So I want you to be very careful to answer the whole question and not just part of the question that you want to answer. So that is one of the questions that you could choose from. A second question you could choose from is concerns the claims of Orthodox faith. Orthodox meaning that which was articulated in the imperial era of the church, and some comparisons and contrasts to other movements that are subsequent to the Orthodox era. And again, a multi-layered question that will engage you in the process of thinking very carefully about the origin of faith claims and the relationship of those faith claims to inherited perspectives that you are already aware of, that you know you already of the tradition that you already know you're a part of. So the next question from which you could choose has to do with liberal theological anthropology and about the question of the Jesus of history and the Christ of faith, and the way in which liberalism continues to have an impact, even though liberation theologians have discounted not just liberation theologians, but neo Orthodox theologians as well, have discounted the liberal claim that humankind is on a trajectory of progress, on a discernible trajectory of progress, given that we are continuously at war, that we still do not know how to share the resources of Earth with everybody equally. Everybody doesn't even have equal access to the internet, which is free, basically. So, 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 it, those kinds of realities put the lie to the idea that liberalism affirms that humankind is on a trajectory of progress. But nevertheless, we do have a liberal heritage, and it is implicated in much of what we do. It's implicated in the way we do biblical scholarship. It's implicated in the way we do trust the insights of science, and that we do uh, have some measure of distance from the fundamentalist um, way of thinking about Scripture. We have some measure of distance from that, and so there's an opportunity for you to reflect on that as well on the exam. And then the last question in part one is about Black liberation theology and other liberation theologies, and their claim that the point of theology is in the doing and not in the speculative nature of philosophical theology, or even the speculative nature of doctrinal heritages that we privilege. Uh, so it has to do with the question of not only what you do, not only of praxis, but of what you don't do as well. And so, one of the layers of that question would ask about what is it that you do not do in furtherance of your faith. In what ways is your Christian faith shaped by what you refuse to believe, for example? So that is the gist of the midterm review that we did on a few days ago, and I hope that those of you who are able to see this video will send to Anjanette Allen uh, any direct to her any questions you might have concerning anything that I have said in this short video explaining things to you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the spring break or reading week. Given the kind of constrained circumstances that we're all in right now, I hope that you'll stay safe and be healthy and be joyful. Take good care. Bye bye.